The story that I want to share with you today also begins with some questionable parenting choices. Jacob, who's now called Israel, along with his two wives, have 12 sons. Now, if you think about that a little bit, these are the 12 sons of Israel. Their descendants become the 12 tribes of Israel. But Jacob had a favorite son. His favorite son was the youngest, Joseph. Joseph always had dreams of being great and doing big things, and his father always fed those dreams. He always favored Joseph, much to the disappointment of Joseph's brothers. But the straw that broke the camel's back was when Jacob gave Joseph this beautifully colorful cloak. At the time, dyes were really expensive, and so not only was this cloak expensive, but it looked expensive. And Joseph's brothers were jealous. They were so jealous. It had nothing to do with Joseph. It wasn't his fault. His father gave him this gift. But what those brothers did is they took him out and they dumped him in a pit. And just as they were about to kill him, some slavers came along and they decided to sell him to the slavers instead. They dipped that beautiful coat in the blood of sheep and took it back to their father Jacob and told him that a wild animal had killed Joseph. But that wasn't the end of Joseph's story. God had big plans for him. Joseph was taken to Egypt by those slavers and sold to Potiphar, who was the captain of the guard for Pharaoh. And in his household, Joseph worked really hard. And Joseph was really well liked. A little too well liked by Potiphar's wife. When Joseph rejected her advances, she turned things around and accused him of advancing on her. And Potiphar was enraged and had Joseph thrown into jail by no fault of his own. But this still wasn't the end of Joseph's story. God had other plans for him. God would use Joseph's misfortune for good. While he was in prison, he met several other prisoners and with God's help interpreted dreams for them. One of the people that he met was Pharaoh's cupbearer who had fallen out of favor. And with Joseph's help, he was restored to his position with Pharaoh. And as he was going, Joseph said, "Please don't forget about me here. I don't belong here." And as luck would have it, the cupbearer forgot about him. God still had plans for Joseph, hadn't forgotten about him, even though it felt that way to him. Years later, Pharaoh was having these really vivid dreams, and no one could figure out what they were about. And it was at that time that the cupbearer remembered Joseph rotting in prison and brought him to Pharaoh. And Pharaoh told him how he had dreamed of 7 sleek, fat cows walking out of the Nile, followed by 7 skinny, grizzled-looking ones. And about how another time he had dreamed about 7 ears of grain that were fat and healthy and strong, and then 7 withered and blighted ones. With God's help, Joseph interpreted that Egypt was going to experience 7 years of prosperity, followed by 7 years of drought and famine. Pharaoh was so impressed that he put Joseph in charge of the planning and in charge of the stockpiling during those prosperous years. God had plans for Joseph. God used his misfortune and brought good out of it. Not only did Joseph spare himself, but he spared the lives of many people in Egypt. He worked hard and he flourished. But God didn't cause his pain and misfortune. It wasn't even Joseph's fault either. Sometimes bad things just happen to good people. When that happens over and over, we see how God takes our bad and transforms it into good, makes it into something new and wonderful. Because you see, this famine also hit the rest of the world, not just Egypt. And lo and behold, Joseph's brothers came to Egypt looking for food. And they came to Joseph. Now, they didn't recognize Joseph. They had written him off as dead, but Joseph recognized them. And he toyed with them a little bit, but he sent them home with food and told them to come back again with their brother Benjamin, Now, Benjamin was the second youngest of the family, and he was the second favorite of Jacob. Reluctantly, when they came back the next time, they brought Benjamin, and while they were there, Joseph stuck a silver cup into Benjamin's pack. And as they were leaving to go back home, he sent the guards after them, and they arrested Benjamin for stealing this cup, and they threw him into prison. Revenge is the dish best served cold. But God had different plans for Joseph. Unexpectedly, his oldest brother pleaded with him, told him about how their father had grieved Joseph's supposed death, and that if he lost Benjamin too, it would just kill him. And the oldest brother offered to take Benjamin's place. The oldest brother who'd regretted all those years what he had done to Joseph, and it just melted him. Joseph couldn't hold a grudge anymore. God took this bad situation caused by his brothers and brought reconciliation to it. And Joseph, he embraced his brothers. They reunited, and in fact, he invited his brothers and dad to move down to Egypt to live with him, and they lived happily ever after. At least for a couple generations. Because this is also the story of how the people of Israel come to live in Egypt. But I'll have to tell you more about that story next time.